I destroyed my marriage for a fantasy. I never thought my life could fall apart so quickly, but here I am typing this with tears streaming down my face. My name is Anna, 34F, and for the past 10 years, I've been married to Nick, 36M. If you met Nick, you'd probably think he was the perfect husband. And you'd be right. Nick is the kind of man women dream about. He's kind, patient, and so supportive that sometimes it feels like he knows me better than I know myself. He's a great provider too. He works as an engineer and always makes sure we're comfortable. He loves me in a way that's steady and safe, but maybe that's where the problem started. Lately, everything in our marriage has felt predictable. Our lives are a well-oiled machine of work, dinner, Netflix, and weekends spent running errands. I know that sounds ungrateful, trust me, I know. But something inside me started to feel, empty. I didn't even realise how much I missed feeling wanted until I got a message on Facebook from Tom, 35M. Tom was my first real boyfriend in college. We were together for a year, but he was always a little too wild for me. He dropped out halfway through, and we lost touch. Seeing his name pop up after all these years caught me completely off guard. I hesitated for a moment before opening the message, and my heart skipped a beat when I saw what he wrote. "Hey Anna, long time no see. How have you been?" It was simple, harmless even, but something about it sent a rush through me. I hadn't thought about Tom in years, yet here he was, reaching out like no time had passed. I replied, and before I knew it, we were chatting like old friends. He told me he was single, working as a freelance photographer, and living a free life. That word, free, stuck with me. At first, I didn't tell Nick about the messages. I convinced myself it was no big deal. It wasn't like I was cheating. Tom and I were just catching up. But as the days turned into weeks, our conversations became something more. Tom would say things like, "You were the one who got away," or "I always wondered what it would have been like if we'd stayed together." It made me feel special in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. One day, Tom suggested we meet for coffee. I should have said no, but I didn't. I told myself it was just a friendly catch-up, nothing more. I even dressed casually, trying to convince myself that this wasn't a big deal. When I walked into the cafe and saw him sitting there, grinning like he'd just won the lottery, my heart raced. The conversation flowed easily, just like it used to. He made me laugh, he complimented me, and he looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the room. Coffee turned into a long walk, and I found myself hanging on to every word he said. When he suggested grabbing a drink at a nearby bar, I didn't hesitate. I wish I could say it ended there, but it didn't. A few hours and a few too many drinks later, we ended up in a hotel room. I don't even remember how it happened. It was like I was watching myself from the outside. The guilt hit me immediately after. I couldn't believe what I'd done. I told myself it was a one-time mistake, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true. When Tom texted me the next day, saying he couldn't stop thinking about me, I felt a mix of dread and excitement. Instead of shutting it down, I let myself get pulled back in. Over the next few weeks, we met up a few more times. Each time, I told myself it would be the last. But fantasies don't last forever. Last night, Nick found out. He borrowed my phone to check the weather app and saw a text from Tom. I walked into the living room and saw him sitting there, holding my phone. He didn't yell or cry. He just stared at me with this look of complete disbelief. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I opened my mouth to explain, but no words came out. What could I even say? That I was bored? That I missed feeling desired? None of it felt like a good enough reason to destroy the life we'd built together. Nick didn't wait for an explanation. He grabbed his keys and left the house. I tried calling him, but he didn't answer. I stayed up all night, replaying everything in my head, trying to understand why I'd done what I did. Tom T texted me this morning, asking if I was okay. I didn't respond. I don't even want to look at my phone right now. All I can think about is Nick and the pain I've caused him. He didn't deserve this. He's been nothing but good to me. I don't know what to do. Nick hasn't come home and I feel like my entire world is falling apart. I don't even know if I want to be with Tom. What I thought was excitement now feels hollow and meaningless. Is there any way to fix this? Or have I ruined everything for good? It's been a week since I last posted, and I wish I could say things are better, but they aren't. Nick still hasn't come home. The house feels empty without him. Every room is a reminder of the life I've destroyed. I've called and texted him so many times that I've lost count, but he won't respond. His silence feels like a punishment, and honestly, I deserve it. 3 days ago, he finally came back, but not to stay. I heard the garage door open and rushed downstairs, hoping he'd come to talk things through. Instead, I found him packing a suitcase. "Nick, please," I started, but he cut me off. "Don't," he said, his voice calm but cold. "I'm just here to grab my stuff." I begged him to stay, to at least let me explain, but he didn't want to hear it. He told me he'd been staying with his brother and had already spoken to a lawyer. "I'm filing for divorce," he said, like it was a simple statement of fact. Hearing those words felt like a knife to the heart. I broke down, crying, pleading with him to reconsider. "It didn't mean anything," I said, desperate to make him understand. But he just shook his head. If it didn't mean anything, then why risk everything we built together? I didn't have an answer. How could I explain something I didn't even fully understand myself? Before he left, he looked me in the eyes and said something I'll never forget. "You didn't just betray me, you betrayed us. The life we built, the trust we shared, the promises we made. I can't unsee what I saw, Anna. I can't unknow it." And then he was gone. The next day, I was served divorce papers. I sat on the kitchen floor with the envelope in my hands, staring at it like it was some kind of cruel joke. But it wasn't. Nick isn't playing games. He's serious. He's requesting full ownership of the house and asking me to reimburse half the savings we used to pay off my credit card debt last year. He's also listed infidelity as the reason for the divorce. I don't know if he's doing this out of anger or if he genuinely believes I deserve to lose everything. Maybe he's right. Meanwhile, Tom has been texting me non-stop. At first, I thought he was checking on me because he cared. But now, I see it for what it really is. Manipulation. He's been asking me to lend him money for some business venture he's working on. I told him I wasn't in a position to help, and his tone changed immediately. He said I was being selfish and implied that he could tell Nick even more details about our time together if I didn't cooperate. The idea that Tom might twist the knife even further terrifies me. I've blocked his number, but part of me wonders if he's already contacted Nick behind my back. The worst part is that Nick's family knows about the affair now. His mum called me 2 days ago. I almost didn't answer, but I figured I owed her some kind of explanation. She was crying when she said, "How could you do this to him? To us?" Nick's parents treated me like their own daughter. They welcomed me into their family with open arms, and now I've shattered that bond. His mum's voice was filled with so much pain that I didn't even try to defend myself. What could I say? That I was bored? That I made a mistake? None of it would undo the damage I've caused. Nick's brother Kyle has also taken it upon himself to make sure everyone in our social circle knows what I did. Friends I've known for years won't even look at me anymore. I bumped into one of them at the grocery store yesterday, and she turned around and walked the other way. I feel like I'm wearing a scarlet letter. A couple of nights ago, I had a brief glimmer of hope. Nick texted me his first message since the night he left. It was short and to the point. "We need to talk." My heart raced as I read those words. Maybe he was willing to work things out. Maybe there was still a chance to fix this. I spent the entire day preparing for the conversation, rehearsing what I'd say, trying to figure out the perfect way to apologize and convince him to stay. When Nick arrived, he looked exhausted. His eyes were bloodshot, and there was a heaviness about him that I hadn't seen before. He sat down at the dining table and motioned for me to sit across from him. "I don't want to make this messy," he said. We don't have kids, so it should be straightforward. I'll keep things civil as long as you do. My heart sank. This wasn't a conversation about reconciliation, it was about logistics. Nick, please, I said, my voice cracking. I know I messed up, but I love you. Can't we try to fix this? He shook his head. Love isn't enough, Anna. Trust is the foundation of a marriage, and you broke it. I can't live like this, constantly wondering if you're being honest with me. I tried to hold back my tears, but they came anyway. I'll do whatever it takes, I said. Therapy, counselling, whatever you want. But Nick had made up his mind. It's too late, he said. I deserve better than this. Those words hit me like a freight train. He's right. He does deserve better. But hearing him say it out loud was like having my worst fears confirmed. Before he left, he handed me a copy of the divorce agreement. Take your time looking it over, he said, but don't drag this out longer than it needs to be. If Nick's rejection wasn't bad enough, Tom has made things even worse. After I blocked his number, he started emailing me instead. His messages are becoming more aggressive. He's threatening to expose everything if I don't help him financially. I'm starting to realise that Tom isn't the person I thought he was. He doesn't care about me. He never did. He saw an opportunity to take advantage of me, and I fell for it. I wish I could go back and undo everything. I wish I had deleted that first message and never replied. But it's too late now. The damage is done, and I'm left to pick up the pieces of a life I shattered with my own hands. Nick hasn't responded to any of my recent messages. He's moving on, and I'm stuck in this limbo, unsure of what my future looks like. Is there any chance Nick might forgive me if I give him time? Or should I just accept that this is the end of our marriage? How do I move forward when I feel like I've lost everything? I wish I could say things were getting better, but they aren't. In fact, they're worse than I ever imagined. Nick has completely cut me off. He didn't respond to my last message, which I sent 2 days ago. All I wrote was, I'm sorry for everything, and I'll respect your decision, but I just need you to know that I'll never stop loving you. Nothing. No reply. Meanwhile, Tom has gone from being a fantasy to a full-blown nightmare. After I blocked Tom's number, I thought that would be the end of it, but he started emailing me. At first, it was just him trying to manipulate me again, saying things like, I thought we meant more to each other, and you don't just throw away a connection like ours. I ignored him, but then his tone shifted. I've got a lot of stuff I could share, Anna. Stuff Nick might not know yet, he wrote in his last email. I froze when I read those words. What else could he tell Nick? I thought Nick already knew the worst of it, that I'd been unfaithful. But Tom was threatening to go deeper, to share intimate details about our time together. I couldn't let that happen. I debated whether to reply. On one hand, I wanted to confront him and tell him to leave me alone. On the other hand, I was terrified that anything I said might make things worse. In the end, I chose silence. The next day, I got an anonymous email from a burner account with a link to a private website. My stomach dropped as I clicked on it. It was filled with explicit photos and videos of me. I instantly recognized them. They were taken during my time with Tom. I didn't even know he had taken some of these photos. My hands were shaking as I stared at the screen. I felt sick to my stomach, like the air had been sucked out of the room. I quickly closed the link and called the police. I thought the police would be my lifeline, but they weren't much help. After explaining what happened, the officer said they could investigate, but that cases like this were notoriously hard to prove. Without direct evidence that Tom uploaded the photos himself, it would be my word against his. Can you remove the photos? I asked, my voice trembling. Unfortunately, these things spread quickly, the officer said. Even if we get the site taken down, they could pop up elsewhere. I felt so powerless. How could Tom do this to me? I'd already lost my marriage, my reputation, and my stability, and now he was taking away my dignity. The officer suggested I file a restraining order, but even that felt like a hollow victory. Tom had already done the damage. It didn't take long for Nick to find out about the photos. A mutual friend of ours, someone I thought would stay out of the mess, forwarded the link to him. I found out when Nick called me. His voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. "You've hit rock bottom, Anna," he said. "I can't believe I ever loved someone like you." Hearing those words was like being stabbed in the chest. I tried to explain that I didn't know Tom had taken those photos, but Nick didn't want to hear it. "You chose him," he said. You chose someone who would do this to you, to us. I hope it was worth it." And then he hung up. I sat on the floor, holding the phone in my hand, sobbing. There was no coming back from this. Nick was done with me, and honestly, I couldn't blame him. After the photo surfaced, Tom went radio silent. No more emails, no more messages. It was like he vanished into thin air. Part of me was relieved, but another part of me was terrified. What if he wasn't done? What if he came back with something worse? I tried to track him down, but I had no idea where he lived or worked. Everything he told me about his life, his freelance photography, his business ventures, could have been lies. For all I knew, Tom wasn't even his real name. I started looking over our messages, trying to piece together anything that might help the police. But as I read through them, I realized just how naive I'd been. Tom had been manipulating me from the start, using flattery and attention to reel me in. I'd fallen for it, and now I was paying the price. The fallout from the affair has been brutal. I've lost almost everyone in my life. Nick's family won't speak to me. My own parents are disappointed, but trying to be supportive in their own way. My mum said, "We all make mistakes." But I could hear the disappointment in her voice. Friends I thought I could count on have turned their backs on me. People whisper behind my back when I go to the grocery store or walk down the street. The shame is suffocating. Financially, things are just as bad. Nick and I finalised the divorce last week. He got the house, the savings, and pretty much everything else. I didn't even fight him on it. I didn't have the energy. I moved into a tiny apartment that I can barely afford on my salary. Every night, I sit in that apartment, staring at the walls, wondering how I got here. How did I go from having a loving husband and a stable life to this? I've started seeing a therapist. At first, I didn't want to go. I thought, what's the point? But after everything that's happened, I realised I needed help. In therapy, I've been forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about myself. I cheated on Nick, not because of anything he did, but because of something inside me. I craved excitement and validation, and I let that craving destroy everything good in my life. My therapist says I need to stop looking for external validation and start finding worth within myself. That's easier said than done. Right now, I feel like a shell of the person I used to be. Yesterday, I found out that Nick adopted a dog. A mutual friend posted a picture of him on Facebook, smiling with the dog at a park. He looked happy, happier than I'd seen him in years. It hit me like a ton of bricks. He's moving on. He's building a new life without me. And I'm stuck here, trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces of mine. I want to be happy for him, but it hurts. It hurts to know that I destroyed the best thing I ever had for someone who didn't even care about me. How do I rebuild from this? Is it even possible to move on after hitting rock bottom? Or is this just who I am now, someone defined by her worst mistakes? It's been 3 months since the divorce was finalised, and my life is far from what it used to be. Every day feels like a fight to keep going. I've lost almost everything. My marriage, my reputation, my financial stability. But I've realised that wallowing in regret won't change anything. Therapy has been the only thing keeping me sane. At first, I went just to have someone to talk to, but now I see it as a lifeline. My therapist says that what I'm feeling, shame, regret, loneliness, is a sign that I still have a chance to rebuild. She says, Hitting rock bottom is painful, but it can also be a foundation to start over. It's hard to believe that sometimes. Every time I walk past a happy couple, I feel a pang of jealousy and self-loathing. Every time I think about Nick, I wonder if I'll ever find someone who could love me the way he did. I haven't spoken to Nick since the divorce, but I see glimpses of his life through mutual friends and social media. He seems happier. He's taken up hiking, started volunteering at an animal shelter, and even started dating again. Seeing him move on while I'm stuck in this mess is bittersweet. I miss him every single day, but I know he's better off without me. He deserves someone who won't betray him. Tom has completely disappeared. The police were never able to trace the photos back to him, and the site hosting them eventually took them down. But the damage was done. Those images are out there, and I'll always live with the fear that they might resurface. Looking back, I can't believe how blind I was. Tom wasn't a fantasy, he was a predator. I fell for his lies because I wanted to feel special, and I paid the price for it. A week ago, I started volunteering at a local women's shelter. It's small, just a few hours a week, but it's given me a sense of purpose I haven't felt in a long time. Hearing other women's stories, many of them far worse than mine, has put my own pain into perspective. One of the women I met there told me something that stuck with me. She said, "We can't undo what's been done, but we can choose what we do next." For the first time in months, I feel like I have a choice. I can either let my mistakes define me, or I can start rebuilding one step at a time. I don't know if I'll ever fully recover from this. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for what I did to Nick. But I'm learning to live with the consequences of my actions. To anyone reading this, if you're standing on the edge of a decision that could ruin your life, stop and think about what you're risking. No fantasy is worth losing everything. Do you think people can truly change? Or is this who I'll always be?